That and the bathroom remodel. People freaked out about the decisions we made, and it was complicated because there were certain things of the house we don't share out of respect for the previous owners.
Yeah.
So, there are things that we needed to do just for our standards,
Mm.
and things that people thought were a waste, or like, oh, why are you getting rid of that? But they don't know the backstory of the condition of those previous items that we replaced. So people freaked out over the bathroom. Why are you doing concrete floors, and why are you painting the walls white? And they're just freaking out. So yeah, that and the clover were big hitters.
Someone said that every time they would go to the bathroom in our bathroom, they'd think that they were going to the bathroom in a prison because the floor is concrete. And I kid you not, I think of that every time I'm in our bathroom now. I disagree. I love our bathroom, but still, when I look at the concrete floor, I'm like, Karen 127649. She of a prison right now.
She won that one.
So the bathroom for sure, and then the clover. People say a lot of terrible things about it's so messy and you're lazy and it looks terrible. It's a whole bunch of weeds, and they don't bother us because we know.
Awesome.
We don't care what people think, and we know that people are very attached to their perfect, grass lawns, and they don't care about the environmental impact that it has. So we're very comfortable with our choice and happy that we're making the more ethical and eco-friendly choice, and we like the way it looks too. But it's very interesting to see how intense people can get on the internet.
They feel so strongly about their lawns, and I didn't know that was the thing. Like,
Angelina, Skyler, welcome to the Creators Canvas. Thank you so much for hopping on. We are kind of a new podcast that is going to launch in maybe the end of May, early June, and so thank you so much for being one of our early guests. Loved watching through y'all's content, and to get started, would love to hear a little bit about the inception of where y'all's content creator journey started. I know it started in 2020, so it's been quite a few number of years. So would love to hear about where y'all's headspace was during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, we're huge fans of you. You've shown up on our For You page, your interviews. So when you DM'd us, I was like, oh my gosh, I love that you interview, and it's always so wholesome and vulnerable. So thank you. We're really big fans and excited that to be here.
Yeah, that makes me really happy. Thank you.
So in 2020, we bought our first house in August of 2020, and I love the internet. I love TikTok. I've always been like a consumer of content. Like I live there. And when we got our house, it was a huge fixer-upper. And I said, okay, I'm going to film this. I was not expecting an audience at all, but I like editing videos, and I felt like even if this is just for us and our family and friends, that's fine. And our very first video went viral. So this kind of all blew up and happened really quickly, and we were sort of put into the creator space without that being our intention. So it kind of fell in our lap, and then we just continued to share more and more of our DIY projects and renovation, and it just sort of grew from there.
And so, Skyler, for you, when that was happening, did you have an understanding of what was going on? Thinking about, were you as, involved in the internet, as Angelina was?
I wasn't so involved with the internet end of it. I was, more of doing the construction component. And I just let her do her thing and film me. And I was more in front of the camera than she was. I just kind of went with it. And it was fun to watch her like grow her account and get all this traction so quickly.
He didn't even have a TikTok. So
yeah, I was not part of TikTok at all.
And he didn't have a TikTok for months. And at this point, we have hundreds of thousands of followers. He still isn't downloading TikTok. He's laughing at Instagram Reels that, like, you could have been laughing with me on TikToks 3 months ago. Like, so it took a while, but, then he came over.
It was funny because, when I was doing some, research on y'all's page, I came across the first video that Spencer ever did a voiceover of. And it was funny because I can tell it was very much a process that you probably pitched it to him. You're like, hey, like, how about you voice over this video? And then I can just hear, Skyler's voice, in doing that. One of the things that you mentioned that really resonates is, you started the content creation journey with just your friends and family in mind. And never really cared, whether this blew up or not. Did you all find keeping that same energy to be a struggle as you grew and grew and grew? Because I know that's something that a content creator can, kind of struggle with, pulling at this both sides.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I definitely, for me, when our account first started to grow, it was just really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But then once we started monetizing our account and getting some sponsored deals, and it was sort of growing in that sense, I definitely started feeling more pressure for our account to continue to grow and our views to continue to grow. And then I got to a point where our account wasn't growing as much, or we started losing followers, or our
Yeah.
views were down. And I was deleting posts. Like if it didn't do well, I was like, it's a flop, get rid of it. I have since moved away from that. And now I'm like,
Yes.
let's just have fun. And, views don't really matter. I just want to post things that are authentic to us and that we have fun making. But there was definitely a period where I felt a lot of pressure for the account to be successful with however you measure that. And happy that we moved away from that pressure.
It got a little stressful with, having to upkeep the account and make sure we really were providing viable content for everyone. So
Yeah, completely agree. It's such a challenge to, not be validated in your content by, how well it's received, by the platform. And that's something I can resonate a lot with, is, because I have pretty much posted like 99% of, anyone I have ever interviewed. The only 1% is if there were some technical difficulties, or if someone DM'd me and asked me not to post it anymore. And thinking about that, I really started to struggle, because I was like, what is to say, one person's story is better than another's, just because it's received, quote unquote, less by, a platform. And so that's something that I've kind of gone on my own journey with as well. So that resonates with me a lot. So how did y'all come to the realization that, hey, like the path that we're going down, maybe isn't the best for the content that we want to make, and you pivoted towards making content that was authentic to yourself? Because I think it really comes across in y'all's videos.
Oh, thank you. I think it was more so wasn't fun anymore. Like, and then we just sort of stopped posting for a bit, because I was like, what's the point? It's
Yeah.
our account's not doing well. Things, it's not being received. Like people aren't viewing or commenting anymore. I think especially people followed our account for our home renovation.
Yes.
And so when we finished our home, and we started posting other things, we would just we would lose followers with every post for a while. So I was like, geez, it was very discouraging. But I think, we realized that we actually like making videos together. We have a lot of fun. And I think when we just started posting more for fun and stopped thinking about views, that's when we were encouraged to just post what we like, even if it doesn't get a lot of views. But yeah, there was definitely that period where I just felt like, oh, I guess our account's done, because we've served our function. People followed us to see this very specific thing. And then when that was over, they weren't interested. I think that's unique about us, is we were never like personalities, I think, many people didn't know our names. I was only on the camera sometimes. Skyler was, but even then, we'd be painting or working on things. You didn't really see our faces. We never talked to the camera, we did voiceovers. So it wasn't until recently that we started really showing ourselves more and talking more. But before, we sort of distanced ourselves. So I feel like our audience connected more with our home or with other things rather than us as individuals. So I think that's sort of an interesting place that we were as creators.
Yeah. So one of the guests that we just interviewed, we kind of touched upon this topic as well. And, he worded it so well. He said, in the beginning, similar to what y'all experienced, he was just a conduit for the content that he created. And so it's thinking, okay, so how can I move from being like a conduit for, this content that people are seeing to, the actual connection that I'm having with my audience? And so how are y'all thinking about, building that more authentic connection, or that more direct connection with your audience now, with having realized that?
I think for me, I mean, we're posting more, about our wedding, about our lives.
A lot more about our lives
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily pertaining to the house at all. So
And I feel like I'm not like taking us as seriously as
Yeah.
before, where I'm just like, oh, this is just sort of fun and we can show more of our humor and our personality and engage more. My professional background up until recently was a teacher. So I was also very much having a very specific sort of persona and face of like hyper professionalism. I feel like now I'm able to also just sort of not take ourselves so seriously and really have fun with the content. And when we have fun, we end up like engaging more with our followers and build more of a community.
And it's so nice to find like a new era that you're entering in terms of your content, right? Because now you have the ability to, create content in a way that you didn't before. And so, another question, kind of had is, so Skyler, I know, before you were a contractor, you were an artist and, I'm not sure if that's the work you're doing now, but how did you find, kind of cultivating your creativity through the art that you made in the past with now, in the content creation world? I know Angelina handles a lot of it, but would love to hear a little bit about how that creative process has been for you.
It's, I mean, it's tricky. I propose these projects to Angelina. I'll say like, oh, let's fix part of the house or whatever, and then she develops the content behind it of how we're going to shoot it and how we're going to present it to people. So for me, the the development of the project is creative for me. That's kind of where I've directed all my creativity. So
He should give himself more credit though, because he does say, "Oh, this will be a really cool shot," or let's do this, or we should say this. So even though I'm the one editing the video, Skyler does have a lot of input and always gives feedback and has ideas for stuff. So yeah, you could definitely see his creative side through a lot of it.
That's incredible. And, with 2020 being the pandemic, I know, that was a really tough, moment for a lot of people. But on the flip side, in a different perspective, I know that's when a lot of content creators got started, because there's just something about, being trapped within, four walls and, making you, reevaluate, your life. And so did y'all have any of those type of reflections, during that time when y'all started your content?
yeah, I mean, that's how we pulled it off. We weren't working as much and we had a lot of time to number one, work on the house and to think about what we're doing with our lives and how we want to direct things. So yeah, there was a lot of that.
Yeah, without the pandemic and the luxury of being home, none of this would have even happened. We wouldn't have even bought our house without the pandemic. I mean, we were living with my mom and it was close quarters.
I mean, that's what pushed us to buy the house in the first.
We should, explore this. And, his work completely stopped. I was working from home, but as soon as, 3:30 was done, I was already available to start working on the house. So pretty much everything was due to the fact that we had a lot more time to invest in our home, which in turn was investing in our content creation.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think about, how many people, experience something similar. It's like, okay, so, I was also, laid off from my job at that time too. And actually I started creating like hiking content. And that was the beginning of, kind of my content creation journey. And I really think that time was a blessing for so many people. And I love that it was a catalyst for y'all to, start the journey that you're on. And so if you think about it, it's been, maybe 3 years since y'all have been content creators. And so what have been some of y'all's highlights during that time? I know y'all were recently featured in the New York Times and the Weather Channel for y'all's Clover Garden. And by the way, I did not know Clover Gardens were a thing. So that was awesome to do research about.
Yeah.
That's a hot topic right
now.
Every so often our Clover goes like really viral again. And
Oh, right.
yeah, and it's just so strange to me. I'm like, we have built a whole house and everyone's like, let's see the clover. I'm like, it's literally watching grass grow. Nothing has changed. It's still green. So that's pretty funny.
The behind front lawns and yard upkeep is it's wild. We're very passionate. So
when it comes to the highlights from these last few years of content creation, well, I personally owe a lot to all of this. I actually was able to have a complete career change due to my experience in content creation and working with different brands.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was a high school English teacher, and I was getting to the point where I was extremely burnt out and struggling, and I felt like I needed a break. And I actually used my experience doing renovating our home and working with different brands to get a new marketing job that I work from home, and I do content creation for them. So content creation has actually quite literally changed my life drastically in our lives. But when it comes to personally, I don't know, doing the Hyundai sponsorship was cool.
The brand deals, all the
Yeah.
brand deals we've done have been, they've been really fun. They've been amazing opportunities. It's amazing to, be able to financially benefit from them and to provide this viable content for people. It's all around been great.
Yeah, we were flown out to South Carolina by
Oh my gosh.
brand, and we did like this whole Heart Tools conference there. And I don't know, we've had a lot of cool opportunities, and yeah, the New York Times. So I feel like all of these things, whenever they happen, we're just like, how is this happening?
Yeah, and I love that you said that because, I think about this concept of, building the life that we want for ourselves. And with content creation, the opportunities that have came up, I'm sure have been things that you never thought you could experience or would experience through, the way that things were going before. Like even for myself, I recently just did a brand deal with Microsoft. And it's like, as a content creator, you're like, oh my gosh, like for this size of a company to recognize me and my content, that that's like a huge milestone. So I'm sure y'all felt the same way, with Hyundai and that tools company. Was it called Hearts, right?
Yeah.
With Hearts. And so with the work that y'all did, do y'all have any continuing, partnerships for longer term? And like, how does that look like?
We don't have any long-term partnerships right now. I mean, we've had brands that we've worked with multiple times, like Cricket, but we don't have like a long-term sponsorship. That's definitely one of the goals, is to partner with a company that like we really believe in and feel like we align our values with, so we can like, continue that partnership long term. But right now it's been pretty much one or just a few like individual campaigns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, Skyler, so for you, Angelina spoke a little bit about, how, content creation has kind of changed the trajectory of her life. And I would love to hear a little bit about, where your headspace was at, with, things starting and, how you feel about, as you reflect back on the journey that it's been.
In terms of my life, it hasn't drastically changed much. Angelina is happier than she's ever been. So for me, that's huge in that regard.
That's amazing.
I'm continuing with my construction business. It's nice to be able to do things on our own home and get recognized for like, oh, he's building this and it's really cool. And so there's some validation that I'm getting that I normally wouldn't have gotten, which is nice.
So validation as in, hey, like the work that I do is actually getting some attention versus maybe before the work that you did in construction. Do you feel like it was harder to get thanks for?
Yes. Yeah, I do mainly residential remodel, and you don't necessarily hear the compliments. You hear more of the problems or the things that people want to change. And so the projects on our own home, people are like, oh my God, that's so beautiful, or that's amazing that you did that. And so that validation is really, really, it's heartwarming and it's motivational and it's all around great.
I completely agree. I think that is an indirect benefit of content creation that a lot of people don't realize, is that like this impact that we're having on people, whether it's, for y'all's content, inspiring people to then renovate their own home and thinking about the before and after pictures of what can be created if you put in that 1% extra effort of work every day. I think it's such a good ode to how beautiful life is in that way. Something that I appreciated seeing, it seemed like Angelina, your family was pretty supportive in the beginning. Like I saw this like a cake that they made you, and I thought that was incredible. So what was that like to have your family kind of be so supportive of that journey?
That was awesome. They're extremely supportive to this day. They're an integral part of this whole operation.
Yeah, we're super, super close with my mom and sister. They helped us with the house. We ran out of budget just doing the inside of the house ourselves. My sister paid for us to get the outside of our house painted.
Oh my gosh.
My sister got us that cake for our TikTok following.
Yes.
They're like, my mom and sister are like greatest supporters with everything in life. So
I mean, they were on their knees on the floor, sanding the floors with us. I mean, they gave a lot of physical labor too, which I've done without them.
Yeah, and I mean, we were living with my mom while we were going through the construction. I mean, we are so privileged in that we were able to do that because, you know, a lot of folks, you know, they'll be paying two different rents. You know, my mom let us stay while we were doing our house renovation rent free, and we're able to pay the mortgage and not live through an unlivable situation. I mean, we owe so much to our family that like we're super, super blessed and lucky to have.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about what you mentioned, Skyler, is that, you know, not only were there, you know, verbal notes of support, but there's also that physical backing, you know, paired with that. It's like, I support you guys, and then I'm going to, you know, physically, you know, put my, you know, body, you know, behind what I'm saying and help you out in that way, you know, because I think it's nice when someone's actions support, you know, what they're saying. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And so now, you know, I know moving into the clover line lawn, I know that has been a huge topic for y'all, and, you know, did a little research and, you know, saw everything. So it seems that there is a lot of controversy around, you know, how that is done or executed. And so do y'all think that's the most, like, I guess, quote unquote controversial content that y'all have created, even though it's like a clover lawn?
That and the bathroom remodel. People freaked out about the decisions we made, and it was complicated because there were certain things of the house we don't share out of respect for the previous owners.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are things that we needed to do just for our standards,
Mm,
and things that people thought were a waste, or like, oh, why are you getting rid of that? But they don't know the
mm,
backstory of the condition of those previous items that we
mm-hmm.
replaced. So people freaked out over the bathroom. Why are you doing concrete floors? And why are you painting the walls? Why didn't they're just freaking out? So yeah, that and the clover were big hitters.
Someone said that every time they would go to the bathroom in our bathroom, they'd think that they were going to the bathroom in a prison because the floor is concrete. And I kid you not, I think of that every time I'm in our bathroom now. I disagree. I love our bathroom, but still, when I look at the concrete floor, I'm like, Karen 127649. Thinking of a prison right now.
She won that one.
So the bathroom for sure. And then, yeah, the clover, people say a lot of terrible things about, you know, it's so messy and you're lazy and it looks terrible. It's a whole bunch of weeds, and they don't bother us because we know,
Awesome.
we don't care what people think. And we know that people are very attached to their perfect, you know, grass lawns, and they don't care about the environmental impact that it has. So we're very comfortable with our choice and happy that we're making the more ethical and eco-friendly choice, and we like the way it looks too. But it's very interesting to see how intense people can get on the internet.
They feel so strongly about their lawns. I didn't know that was the thing. Like
And so it's interesting. So, you know, with the, you know, bathroom story, and I would love to hear y'all's opinion about this. So, you know, usually what happens is, you know, a content creator can, you know, create some type of content that the audience doesn't have a full story on. And then people then make an opinion on, you know, what they see at the surface level. And so it's this question of, you know, is it worth providing the full story to try and, you know, defend myself, or is it worth, you know, just letting things play out the way they are? And so how do y'all think about, you know, kind of that concept?
I think you can, you know, only put as much energy into something that you want to. I mean, with the clover, I like responding to people's mean comments because it's not that serious.
And we're not offended by it. It's just funny that people care so much about our lawn. Like it's
right.
It's so significant in the scheme of things.
But I also think that, you know, it's not always worth the time and energy to address every single negative person, which we definitely don't do. Like occasionally I'll respond to someone who says something nasty because, a lot of people don't like our kitchen. They think it's wild that we have a green kitchen. So like we did a response post to someone who said like our green kitchen looks horrible. So things like that we definitely sometimes respond to because we think it could be funny. But I mean, I don't know. I could also see sort of not giving attention to negative people as well. I wouldn't if there was something that really genuinely was triggering or
Mm.
sensitive. I feel like I would have to protect our peace and our mental health. But I usually respond to things that I think are kind of silly because it could be our response can be a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah, 100%. And I actually really like that approach to it. I remember looking at one of y'all's posts, and I think y'all were responding to a question or comment of, why isn't your kitchen white? You know, it's like, it's like that is such a pointed question that like comes out of nowhere, which is interesting. And so, being in the DIY world, Skylar, I understand a little bit. That's your background, and you're in the construction business. And so, Angelina, what did your DIY experience look like? Before content creation, and did you ever think you would be in this world? Like it's so interesting.
Absolutely not. No
It was
experience.
non-existent. I had to teach him how to do
He
all of
taught
it.
me everything. Even when we bought the house, I knew what our budget was. And I said, the house was, a very serious fixer upper. And I said, are you sure we could afford this? Like, I truly it looked so beyond what we would be capable of. And
Hmm.
Skylar said, we can because we are going to do it ourselves. And the labor
Mm,
is the most expensive part. The material,
mm.
it's not that expensive. It's the labor, and we're going to be doing the labor. And I said, okay, if you think we could do it. So yeah, he taught me everything. I look back, I'm like, how did we do it's so not my
She's not very
Forte.
I'm not handy. I'm like very clumsy. I'm always falling over. I'm always like spilling things. So I learned so much, and I'm so lucky that Skylar is like so patient and sweet and kind. So, he taught me everything and would give me tasks to do and teach me how to do things. And now I feel like I notice things that I never noticed before. I've never looked at someone's baseboard before. I notice things because I just was never one to even pay attention. But because I learned so much in that process, now I pay attention to things that I never did before. So I was completely new. So I think our account is interesting because we have one person who's an expert and can actually tell you, how things work and how to do things. And one
Yeah.
person is coming from the actual like beginner perspective of I don't know what I'm doing and I could do it. So I think that balance sort of provides like an interesting perspective from our content.
And so, Skylar, can you speak on a little bit about, how it was seeing that growth with Angelina, firsthand? Because I'm sure that was something that you're like really proud of her for her.
I am. I mean, I have so much confidence in her. We just got a trailer and we're gonna
Yep.
fix that, and like she's gonna carry half the load, and I don't think I'm gonna have to teach her how to do any part of it. She's just gonna know how to do what she needs to do.
I'm less confident, but we'll see.
I mean, I'm not a teacher. I don't like see myself as like that being one of my skill sets, but
Mm.
she learned very quickly, and she picked up all the skills, sanding and refinishing, all of that's very it's skilled work, and she picked it up really quickly, and she was super helpful.
Well, y'all, like what I think is so beautiful there is, in one vertical, it was, Angelina's, journey becoming better at, DIY and all of the work that y'all do. But then Skylar, even for yourself, maybe you're like, you kind of identify yourself as, hey, like, I'm not really a teacher, but that's something I'm sure you've had to learn about, hey, like, these are the best ways that maybe, Angelina learns, and, let me try and work around that. And I'm sure, with the fact that you feel confident in her to handle half the load for the trailer, then I don't think you did too bad of a job. And so with the trailer project, can y'all talk about that a little bit? Because I think with so much of y'all's content in the beginning being the house, and then now starting this like super big new project, like how does that feel? Does it bring back memories of when y'all first started the house? Because I'm sure that's amazing.
It's fun without the pressure. Before we
Mm,
had a time crunch to like get things done because our living conditions, we were felt a little cramped, and
yeah.
this is going to be purely fun because there's no pressure. We're just going to work on it when we
Mm.
can, and when we're finished, we'll go on all these trips together. We'll bring our cats, we'll toss them in the trailer, and we'll go explore the US.
And do y'all have any inspiration for, the designs that y'all make? Because so I know in y'all's house, y'all have done a lot of traveling, and so I wonder if y'all have seen anything that y'all have then put into your house, or things that you plan to incorporate into the trip, because y'all's first house that you're living in now played such a big part of y'all's journey. And so, were there any stories during that time that really stuck out to y'all? Especially if I think about, hardships that y'all faced during that time. Like maybe there was like a contractor that y'all had, and then he didn't come through, and like things were like a disaster. Like I would love to hear a little bit more intimately about, kind of any stories that y'all experienced during that time.
There was a fair amount of drama. I mean, it was, for the most part, it was fun, but we had, a drywall contractor come in to do drywall work, and we couldn't get him to come back to finish, and he made a million mistakes, and it wasn't to my level of standards. And trying to explain to Angelina like what I wanted out of him without like being able to show her was, it was a little tricky, because to her it looks like, oh, it's finished, it's drywall, it's good, but there were certain imperfections that I can't look at every day.
Yeah.
So that's, that was one tough situation. It wasn't like a deal breaker, but it was a hardship.
We did most of the work. I want to say like 90% of the house, just us two.
Oh my gosh.
So with that was also a challenge. Yeah, the floors were a huge issue, but I think that overall it was like timing. So we bought the house, we got the keys to the house in September. And initially we were like, we'll be in by Halloween. Okay, then it was October. Then we're like, Thanksgiving. Then it was November. Then we're like, New Year's. Then it was New Year's. And then we were able to get in. I don't know why we always did it by holidays, but
we kept giving ourselves these firm like commitments to time frames, and it's like
and
we would fall short of all of them, and so it was like this we just kept getting defeated, because we're like, shit, we didn't make it to this deadline.
We had,
and these are our own deadlines.
They're arbitrary. But then we also had people online like, when's the house ready, or next part, where's part 20? And I'm like, we definitely added a lot more extra stress on ourselves of like, we need to get this done quickly. But we also, once we got started, we ended up doing a lot more than we thought we were going to do. We were like, okay, what's the minimum level we needed just to move in to make it livable? But then once we got started, we were like, well, we might as well just rip this wall out.
I started reframing doorways, and none of that was part of the plan. I mean, I lifted up our ceilings. I did all kinds of stuff that was not part of the plan.
The day that we got the keys on September 3rd. The day we got them in the afternoon. We came to the house and we're like, okay, it's our house. And we're like, okay, like, well,
let's game plan. Let's figure out what we're going to do.
We were there at the house until 1 a.m, knocking stuff down.
We had the whole kitchen demoed in one night.
We literally,
oh my gosh.
Our neighbors probably were like, oh my gosh, day one. And these people are like so disrespectful. We were just so excited and like amped up. And I posted our part 1 of like, this is what we did in our first day of getting the house. And that was one of the posts that went super, super viral, because it was just a ridiculous amount of stuff that we did in day 1. In fact, I think day 1 was 2 parts of just like all of this stuff that we did. And then we were going to be done at like 10 p.m. And then my sister got off work and she was like, oh, you started without me? And then she came, and then we ended up like taking, it was just really wild. So I think that it was just a lot of emotions of excitement and then frustration, and it was a lot.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because with DIY, I'm sure it is this concept of a labor of love. And, when we think about like a home we live in, or, something that we can buy, it's like, okay, we can buy a house, and then we then have, this relationship with the house. Or, we can put our blood, sweat, and tears into a house, and then we have this like completely deeper relationship. And so what relationship do y'all have with your home? And I know that's kind of a weird question, but I'm sure that's something y'all have considered before.
I think we're borderline unhealthy connected to the house. I mean, we got engaged. We got like everything, like all of our markers are like based on this house in life. So we're very attached to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a personal thing for us. In so many ways. One, that I didn't know that we could be more connected and be closer, but through the process of doing the house together, I definitely feel like we got even closer with each other. And I think that I could see how it would be really frustrating for some people to work in that space, but I really don't feel like we never fought. I mean, of course there would be like disagreements, but I just feel like we really just felt like teammates and partners and like getting stuff done together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we became closer in the process. Like he said, he proposed to me in our backyard,
Oh my gosh.
had our, an engagement party here with all of our loved ones. We adopted our first cats here in this home. He works from home about 50% of the time. I work from home. Like we spend so much time here. We love hosting. So like our preference is for, friends and family to come here. Like we love having people over. So we definitely feel really connected. I mean, we talk about like what happens if we need to move one day because it's
We're
a
never
really
selling this
it's a
house.
really good sign for us. But we're like, what if one day we want to upgrade? Like, how could we ever leave this home? So we've definitely have talked about how much our home means to us for sure.
It's interesting because so much of what you're describing is, like in the startup world, they talk about how, you spend your all this time, building up your baby and it literally becomes your child. And then, founders have this struggle with, like, okay, so now if I want to get to the next level, do I sell the company? But it's like selling your baby. So like, how does that feel? So that's kind of what it reminded me of. So whenever y'all got closer because of the DIY project, it reminds me of a story my friend's mom told me when I was in high school. She said, if you ever want to test your relationship, travel with your partner internationally and, see how it goes. So I think y'all took it to the next level is, if you ever want to take a relationship, do a DIY house together. And
Yes.
so in what ways did y'all's relationship deepen, in a way that you didn't even know was possible?
I think for me, personally, I don't want to say we got to know each other better because we definitely knew each other like very much. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There was something like very intimate about working on the house together, problem
Mm.
solving together, like demonstrating patience for each other, like kindness. Like one person
Mm.
might take on more of a task than the other person one day, and then the other day it might switch. Like there was just sort of like a loving collaboration. I can't think of the right words, but
It's the growth of trust and intuition that, for
Mm.
me at least, that really grew. I mean, I would just before she would say something, I'd be like, "Oh, let's think about it, or let's talk about it," and then now I just blindly follow everything. Like it just there's complete trust, and there's no second guessing any of it.
That's beautiful when you can have that unwavering faith in your life partner. So that's so beautiful. And so, thinking about, now moving to y'all's big project with the trailer, what are some learnings? And they don't have to be specifically about, how to do, like the wood floor or anything like that. But what learnings do you take from, y'all's first house and renovating that and that you plan to apply to the trailer and the work that y'all are doing there?
Expectations and deadlines. You know, you, we're our biggest critic, and we're the ones that set
Mm,
up the most amount of potential disappointment. So if we can control our expectations and give ourselves actual reasonable timelines to do things, then it will just be purely fun.
mm.
There won't be any of that unnecessary pressure.
It's interesting because, and I'm curious if this resonates with y'all, to provide a little bit of a different perspective. So, with being in y'all's living situation that you were in, during the pandemic and having your back up against the wall. And I imagine that's where those tight deadlines came from. And so, on the flip side, it's like, so now that there isn't that pressure, do y'all feel like there's a possibility to then, move slower than you'd like, from that? Because I always think about the craziest things that people have done in life. A lot of times it's been because their back has been up against the wall. So it's something I think about a lot.
I mean, we definitely don't have that pressure anymore, but
Yeah.
there is the excitement of wanting to use it and go out and
Mm,
venture. And I think that'll be the motivational push that we need to actually get the project done without having the negatives of the unwanted pressure.
before we bought it, we discussed, we're like, okay, this is fun. We don't want this to be something that adds stress in our lives. We want it to be something that adds like joy, like
hmm
working on it together, creating something, creating the content for it, like all of that. We just want it to be fun so that, we're stressed, we'll take a break. We sort of wanted to to sort of set our expectations of like, this is supposed to be a hobby for us and something that's like adding and bringing joy to us and not something that's stressing us out. So I think that's why we're both really excited to work on it, because, you know, if we ever have stuff going on in our lives that's making it overwhelming, then we'll just take a back seat and get back to it when we're ready.
I love that. And so, you know, pulling a greater theme from there, you know, which is, you know, to create. And I would love to hear, you know, y'all's perspective on, you know, what does that even mean? You know, with this being the, you know, creator economy that people are saying. And, you know, with this podcast being, you know, the creator's canvas, it's like a concept that I reflect on a lot. And I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on, you know, what does creating mean to y'all? And what is your relationship with creating?
That's a really good question. For me, I feel like to create is to make something new. And whether that is taking something that's existing and putting your own spin on it, your own perspective on it, whether that is doing, you know, what Skyler does and, you know, taking a white canvas and creating beautiful art, or
Yes.
taking an older home and then creating a new space. Whether in content creation, it is taking, you know, quite literally creating videos or photographs or podcasts. I feel like it's to make something new. And I think that everybody has the ability to create. And I think everybody does
Agreed.
create, you know, in different ways, whether they're creating just for themselves or creating for an audience. I think that everybody adds something new and something of value to this world.
Beautifully said.
I can't even top that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because, and I'm sure y'all have had conversations with some of y'all's friends about people that are interested in getting into content creation. And, you know, something that, you know, we hear a lot of is, you know, I never make my first post, you know, because it's not perfect. Or, you know, I never make my first post because I'm scared I will be judged by it. You know, when y'all hear that, you know, what type of advice, you know, comes to mind for y'all that you would want to offer, you know, for people kind of struggling through that and thinking in that way?
You just got to pull off the Band-Aid and get started. You got to, you know, you're going to have negative feedback at some point. You just have to push forward and put out things and just continue, and you'll grow and you'll learn who your, you know, your base is, and you'll learn who's like what people want to see from you. And you just kind of, you learn as you go.
And I think that that's great advice. And I have a lot of friends and people sort of talk to us about wanting to start TikToks for their business or just for themselves. And
Yeah.
I would just say to go for it. And that I think every single person has a story to tell. I'm very big on storytelling. And I think there are
Yes.
lots of different ways to storytell. And everyone has something of value to bring into this space and to create what you would want to see. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but there's a quote by my favorite author, Toni Morrison. And
Tony
she
Morris.
essentially says something along the lines of like, she wrote for her first novel, The Bluest Eye, she wrote the novel that she wanted to read.
Interesting.
I think that for content creation, especially for folks of marginalized backgrounds who maybe aren't as represented on different platforms, you know, to create those videos or those stories that you want to see and you're not seeing. Maybe you are that voice or that face or that person that someone else would want to look to. So that's one of my pieces of advice is to go for it. And if you have something that you want to share, someone else has something that wants that shared with them.
I love that because it reminds me of the quote, you know, be the change that you want in the world. And then like, you know, a more nuanced, pointed version of that quote is, you know, writing the book that you want to have read, you know? So I love that because then I'm starting to think about all the different branches that that quote could be pointed towards, you know, for a specific topic. And so for y'all's content, how has the storytelling evolved? Because to your point, stories are something that's so fascinating and something that is intertwined with content creation, you know, maybe even one and the same.
I think early on, the story for us was just, you know, our house, and it was very linear. You know, we did everything in parts. that was very popular for TikTok 2020, 2021 was part 1, 2, 3, 4. I feel like now, there might be a part 2 type of situation, but I mean, it was really like episodes. So early on, the storytelling was very linear, very, each part or each chapter of what was going on in the house. And I think now we view the content more holistically. So it doesn't need to have like a very clear beginning and end of like, this is where the house started and this is, the end product. I feel like we zoom in on like details that seemingly previously would maybe have been like a small part of a video. Like we have, for example, a milk door from the 1950s. And that was like a small part of our videos, like in those parts, like, oh, and we renovated this. And then, we did a video where we just talked about this milk door, which is like a very small detail, but that is its own story in and of itself. So I feel like we zoom in and out a lot more than we used to when we first started.
Yeah, we definitely skipped over a lot of things because our momentum was so quick and we were just trying to like go, and now we're like picking apart all the little components, and as she said, go back in and zoom in on like one little story or one little aspect of it, and it's a much more organic approach to showing things.
And did that, initial, explosion of growth, do y'all feel like that was overwhelming or hard to handle? Because, thinking about, your first post ever on TikTok, blowing up, and then how do I even navigate this? How was that kind of experience?
Yeah, definitely.
Because we didn't want to lose momentum, and we weren't even sure of the trajectory of things. So yeah, I mean, it was a little overwhelming.
And our first post, not only did it, I think at the time, our first post, we just showed the house, and I think we got 200,000 views on it, which was like a lot. I was like, oh my gosh.
For like we had like 100 followers, and then there's like 200,000 views.
Yeah, we're like, what is happening? But on that very first post, we got a comment that said, it's not every day that you see your childhood home on TikTok. So
yes, I saw that.
Our very first post, the original owner of the house saw it. So we immediately saw this like huge impact on day one that not only, I mean, yeah, it had this huge reach, but also we already connected with who lived in this house and heard their story as well. So, I mean, it really just felt so big, so quickly. And we saw like the power of TikTok and how it connects you to others quite literally immediately for us.
Thank you so much for sharing that story again. So I remember reading that, and I think it goes back to, the fundamental beauty of what social media can do. Obviously, there's so many conversations nowadays about, the effects it's having, but, going back to the roots, this is like fundamentally, what it was, created for. And so that is amazing that happened. Did that person, what were their thoughts about how y'all's house look now and like all the work that's been done? I'm sure their mind was blown.
Yeah, she was grateful because the house, was neglected over the years, and so to really clean it up and just re-beautify what was her childhood home was exciting for her to see.
Yeah, and she's super, super sweet. We were talking on Instagram for a while, and after we finished the house, we invited her over and she saw everything, and she FaceTimed her dad and showed him, everything that we did. And it was like a really sweet moment. And we completely redid the kitchen. It used to have these blue tiles, and we basically had to like crush them up, during demo to get them out of there. But we had all these tiles. We're big on recycling, and we didn't want to just throw them away. So we had this bag of tiles in our garage for the longest time. And then we ended up, we're like, we don't know what to do with them, but something.
We're saving for months.
We ended up making her a planter
out of
the tile of the kitchen for her. And we planted some lavender because she mentioned that her mom, who passed away, her favorite color was purple. So we gave that to her, which one of the walls that we painted was purple. So there was just a lot of connections, and it really humanized the whole experience for us. And it was definitely something really special, and goes back to your previous question about, what this home means to us.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, because that story really points me back towards why I started this podcast, thinking about, humanizing, your favorite creators. And I think that goes to show, so much about both of y'all's character. The fact that, her responding in that first video wasn't just something that y'all could then make more content off of. It was like, wow, like this really touched me, and we want to do something nice for her that is symbolic of the house that I'm sure she has a lot of memories in as well. And with that being said, something I like to ask to as we wrap up the podcast is what is something that y'all wish people knew about you?
When it comes to like people online, I just wish people knew that we're just humans, and all of your creators, all of your favorite creators, everyone is just human and hopefully doing their best. And I think that sometimes people put creators or celebrities or whoever on a pedestal, and
Yes.
I think at the end of the day, like we're all on this earth, like trying to have like a human experience. Or having a human experience. And I don't know, I wish that people knew that on the other side of videos are actual real people with like full lives. I know that's not specific to us.
That's very well
but
put.
I thought that was incredible. And Skyler, just want to give you the space if you had anything come to mind.
I have nothing to add to that.
Okay. And so, before we wrap up, are there any projects y'all would like to talk about? So I know y'all have the trailer upcoming. Is there anything else that, y'all have top of mind? Would love to give y'all, the time to talk about that, especially thinking about how exciting those projects could be.
We have a super secret project coming up. It's a large project. It's my dad's house.
Yes, I saw that.
We're gonna completely renovate. That's our next actual major project.
So we almost started that a year ago, and we made like a first video that you may have seen, but all of these sort of life things happened that we weren't able to start at that time, or that he wasn't ready for us to start. But now it is the plan is in motion. So hopefully very soon we'll be getting a very, very large remodel, but we haven't announced it on social media yet because the last time we announced it, we announced it premature. The next time you see it announced, it means like it is happening. Like we have put a hammer to the wall.
The trailer and then y'all's dad's house is going to be in tandem, so working at the same time.
Yeah, so we're continuing the organic approach of not necessarily having everything in a linear fashion, and it's just things that come up in our life as we work on them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So that y'all are going to be busy, maybe even more busy than the first house.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say. Well, y'all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the Creators Canvas. It really was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed the conversation.